Hello, hello, and welcome back to Temptation's Ballad. We're going to finish up our investigation, which should be fun, right? In the afternoon, the sun hung low in the horizon as Maeve and Artemi finished up their rounds through the neighborhood. Most of the injured were taken care of and were eager to go home and escape Artemi's zappy healing spells. The night felt rather useless. Maeve did most of the work healing the injured, directing the recovering efforts and comforting the small folk. All Artemi could do was stand stiffly by her side. Maeve reassured her that the mere presence of the Creator's Chosen was comforting to the people, but it didn't make her feel any more helpful. I haven't been really pulling my weight, have I? Even the other knights are looking at me funny. Maeve looked up from her, from her musing with a snort. I believe there are more intrigued. Intrigued. I don't know. I don't know, folks. I'm sure you're all laughing at me. But that's okay. That's what I'm here for. But our little partnership, than anything else. A holy knight and an exterior druid working together. Our ancestors would be laughing themselves upon a second death. Artemi frowned, confused. Whatever do you mean? Maeve stared at her for several moments, as though checking to see if she was serious. I don't suppose... Okay. I don't suppose they teach you our history in your cathedral these days. Shouldn't be surprised. To the victor goes the spoils. More confusion swarms through Artemi's head, but not enough to direct her from noticing the familiar figure approach. She whipped around with an indignant scowl. Not this time, you little thief! That fucking stings, you little... Before the urchin could make another hasty escape, Artemi grasped him by the wrist with a furious glare. I shan't be tricked again. You will come with me and answer my questions, thief. Oh, bugger off, you fucking knob. I ain't got nothing for ya. The urchin writhed furiously, but Artemi's grip was immovable. As she hoisted him up and shook him by the collar. When you mugged me a few days ago, how did you know I would be carrying such a valuable package? Did anyone coerce you into this job? Emil, I always forget his name is Emil. I don't have... scowled and crossed his arms stubbornly. I'd rather get thrown back behind bars than help a pissy knight. I ain't telling you shit. You little... Maeve ducked her head between their little squabble curiously. What is this package you're talking about? This boy. He is the one who stole the crown of rubies I was tasked to deliver to the prince. Hey, you can't prove anything. I'm being framed, I tell you. Maeve stared at the urchin curiously. Oh, I thought I recognized you. Emil, was it? You're quite famous around here. The list of complaints and petty crimes reported in your name is enough to fill a novel. Quite the talented thief, this one. The urchin grinned proudly. What can I say? I'm bloody good at what I do. I'll take that as a confession, then. We best hand him to the city watch. Perhaps he'll feel more cooperative once his parents come to pick him up. Are you daft? I ain't got no parents. Artemi blinked. Oh, well, perhaps one of the church's orphanages will have to have a place for him. Emil burst out, laughing with a sneer. I've escaped both prison and those little hellholes for kids before I'll do it again. You think catching me is doing either of us any favors? Fuck off, mate. You best just let me go. Artemi felt a loss for words. It didn't feel right to just release him without answers, but it didn't sit well to throw a child into prison either. Maeve suddenly placed a gentle hand on her shoulder with a pointed look. Gautier, why don't you put the boy down? Both Artemi and the urchin blinked at her with surprise. I can't. Look, you all know my reading skills. It's next to nothing. Well, as you wish. Emil eyed Maeve warily as he dropped down at her feet. What angle are you trying, mate? None whatsoever. You may leave. The urchin squinted. What? I'm free to go? Just like that. Maeve kneeled down to face the boy at eye level. I've seen your record, young man. You've stolen a wealth of goods and valuables, and yet you're still on the street in rags. You've been caught and arrested many times, but always escape. There's a simple explanation here. You are being taken care of in exchange for your work. Not very well, but taken care of nevertheless. By the Thief's Guild, perhaps. The urchin grins and puffs his chest out proudly. Well, I ain't afraid to admit it. I'm one of their best. And they care for me better than the orphanage or this shit city ever has. Maeve nodded patiently. Indeed, you're a talented thief. Always managing to trick people with your youthful charm. The Thief's Guild is lucky to have you. Her eyes narrow. Tell me, young man. What do you plan to do once you're older? Emil looked taken aback. What are you on about? It's a simple question. What is your plan after you've outgrown your usefulness to the Thief's Guild? The urchin faltered for a bit, but growled stubbornly. Hey, don't you go putting words in their mouth. The guild ain't ever isn't gonna just leave me hanging. Maeve was silent. She gently reached out and grasped the boy's hand. Her thumb brushed over his bony waist. Her eyes drift across his thin, malnourished figure. Yes, I can see how they care for you. However, in the future, if you ever find yourself in need of a friend, House Osmia would be glad to have a man of your talent. Find one of our stands in the market district and tell them you are a friend of Maeve's. My doors are always open to you. A mix of suspicion and utter bewilderment swarm across Emil's face. Why would a fancy pants noble ever want to help a nobody like me? What's the catch, lady? Maeve's simply smiles underneath her veil. Friends help friends. That's just how the world works, young man. She got up and turned to leave, beckoning for Artemi to follow her. Now, if excuse me, I have to help my knight friend here figure out who was behind her jewelry mugging. Good day to you. Come along, Gautier. Right away, my lady. Emil was left gaping and stunned as the two left without another word. They walked for a small distance with Artemi glancing back at the boy in bewilderment. You're really just going to let him go? We didn't even get any of the answers we were looking for. Maeve peered at her tiredly. My dear Gautier, I say this with the utmost respect. Has anyone ever told you that you've got the social awareness of a brick? Damn. Yo say. Not everyone will be coaxed into aiding you through threats and closed fists. Hey, wait up! As though on cue, Emile caught up with them with sheepish pout. The urchin glanced around the street cautiously before leaning in close. Okay, you didn't hear it from me, but the day before I ran into Nighty here. Emile jerked his head towards Artemi. A guy came up to me and told me that a lady knight was gonna come out of the church district with an easy score. He told me that I'd make mad money if I stole her package and took it to the black market at Rotten Reeds. He paid me like 10 gold to go through with it. I was psyched, but the whole thing smelled fishy, yeah? I usually had to pay for good tips like that. Artemi stared at the urchin in surprise, while Maeve tried her best to hide her I told you so look behind her veil. We appreciate your help. Could you describe the man you spoke with? Emile scratched his head. Well, he was this youngish guy. Looked a little older than you two. And he was this bright blue peacock. We got more bird rep. Artemi and Maeve exchange glances. The only peacocks in Axia are the royal family. And the only one who's left is... Prince Cassius? That can't be right. That means that the prince sent me on a mission to deliver his rubied crown, and then paid this boy to intercept and sell it on the black market. Okay, I thought it was the prince at first too, but that can't be right, can it? I saw him at the festival today. The guy was so nervous he couldn't even walk straight. But the guy who gave me this tip, he was almost kinda scary. Real cold, stern-like. I almost didn't recognize him because of how different they were. Emile cleared his throat and sheepishly stuffed his hands in his pockets. Anyways, that's all the darn info I've got for you. Maeve smiled. We thank you for your cooperation, Emile. Here, have 10 gold pieces for your troubles. The urchin shook his head with a mischievous grin. Nah, keep it. Ain't no money worth a noble owing you a favor. I'll be seeing you around, friend. With that, Emile ran off down the street out of sight. Maeve chuckled as she watched him go. That one learns fast, doesn't he? I'm more impressed by your negotiation skills, my lady. You convinced him to disclose his secrets without threatening him or anything. I would have broken both of his legs and chopped off his arm before even asking anything. Not all tools need sharp edges. Edges got here. More importantly, I am worried about what this means. Maeve's eyes narrowed as she processed this new information. I can only conclude that the prince did not want the rubies to arrive at the royal palace at all. His goal was to scatter the rubies to the people in the underground black market. If he hired a lowly urchin to do this, it must mean he wasn't too picky about who got their hands on them. As she clicked her tongue thoughtfully. And shortly afterwards, a demon showed up in Axia. Got here. Do you have an inkling as to where the rubies are? Well, the cloaked mage stole 2 of the rubies during our encounter at the fighting ring. As for the other two, one was immediately purchased by an anonymous buyer. The last one disappeared from the market without notice. Maeve's brow furrowed. Wow, okay. If this cloaked mage already has 2 of the rubies, then why send a demon to attack your friend? Unless... The druid's eyes narrowed. Tell me, Gautier, how trustworthy is this Kalodi Bonebreaker? Oh, not at all. Artemi faltered. He is my friend. Though he may be infamous for underhanded schemes, I have faith that he has good intentions at heart. He would never do something that could jeopardize this mission. Even as she spoke, Artemi cursed herself for the doubt plaguing her voice. Maeve did not look convinced either, but did not speak on it. Then I will trust in your judgment for now. Moving forward, I think our next course of action should be to investigate our nervous little prince. What? I could never be so bold as to accuse His Highness of wrongdoing. This is no accusation. Your mission is on His Highness's behalf, is it not? Then this is more than Then it is more than responsible to request an audience for information. Maeve smiled. And given that House Osmia is aiding you in your search, I hope you have the courtesy to include me in your meeting with Prince Cassius. Of course. Then matters are settled. For now. It is time for us to depart. I look forward to speaking with you again, alongside His Highness. The noble bowed and quietly dismissed herself. Artemi was left alone in the street, suddenly feeling very cold and lost. A little chill hung in the air, the sun dipping low in the horizon. Cole's feet wobbled unsteadily against the cold cobblestone as he scanned the marketplace plaza through hazy eyes. His senses felt heavy with exhaustion, and he was never one for healthy decisions. He could rest after finding Hamish. It shouldn't be too difficult. Few people were still around after the battle in the streets. Cole perked up as he spotted the older hyena resting by the fountain in the market plaza. Hamish looked up, unsurprised to see him. Cole hesitated for a moment. Hey. Hey. Cole felt Hamish glance over his wounds with a hint of worry. Glad to see you're hanging out. You're out and about again. How are you feeling? Like shit. But you know, alive. That's something. An awkward air hung between them. After a moment, Cole quietly scoot over to sit next to Hamish on the fountain's edge. Hey, thanks again for saving me. And, sorry. For being a brat and whatnot these past few days, years, basically all time. A small laugh rumbled from hyenas' throats. There's no need to apologize. It's all part of raising a kid, I suppose. Cole paused. Maybe. But I've been kinda an awful son. And you didn't really deserve any of it. He hung his head low. So, sorry, again. Hamish chuckled and reached down to pat his head. There was a moment of surprise on his face when Cole didn't shake him off. You did well in that fight today. Good tactics, quick on your feet, using what you had on your hand. Of course, ideally, I would have preferred that you had gotten out unharmed, but you're alive. Hamish flushed a warm smile. Flashed. I'm proud of you. Cole felt his chest flutter for a moment before he puffed out his cheeks indignantly. Well, all those tactics and strategy lessons you drilled into me were useful for once. I'm surprised you actually paid attention to my lessons. Cole scowled. Just a little bit. Papa keeps raving on about how you're the brains behind the crew. I guess I was at least kinda interested. Hamish smiled, whilst hiding a small laugh. I see. The one with the whole accepting you for who you are and you can tell me anything. I figured you were the one who put him up to it. That was, like, only 10% of the talk. Papa spent the other 90% rambling about how you were working your ass off and I should be nicer to you. Of course he did. Speaking of which, can we talk? The air grew tense once more. Cole fidgeted and bit his lip, considering his next words carefully. Back in the fight with that demon. That was Hail of Thorns. At first I thought maybe you were just sticking arcane crystals on your arrows, but the effects were too precise to be borrowed from a stored spell. Using Longstrider to kick and launch her across the street was a clever trick too. Cole watched the elder hyena closely. Hamish's expression was strained, but was kept carefully calm. You're a spellcasting ranger, aren't you? Yes. Since when? A long time ago. Maybe a year or so after I met your father. Does Papa know? No. Irritation clawed at the back of Cole's chest. So you spent this entire time trying to convince me to out myself to Papa, when you're too much of a coward to do it yourself. A bit hypocritical, don't you think? The soft warmth of Hamish's face disappeared as he peered down at his hands with a hint of guilt. Maybe a little, yes. He looked up at Cole with pleading eyes. Out of the two of us, Morrow is least likely to be hurt by you. I just thought, maybe you could soften the blow before I break the news to him. Oh please, as if Papa could stay mad at you for more than a few minutes. Hamish suddenly looked very tired. It was the exhaustion of someone that carried a silent weight for years with no outlet or relief. Sometimes, years of love and trust have a way of unexpectedly slipping out from under you. Especially for someone like me. Hamish peered up at Cole with a soft smile. You, though. You are Morrow's son. He loved you from the moment you were brought into this world. You were nothing but a crying, whimpering bundle. No courage, no great accomplishments to your name, just you. Yet he loved you all the same, and will continue to love you no matter who you become in time. So you want me to tell him that I'm a mage. He cares about you just as much, though. I don't see why you can't tell him yourself. Hamish let out a deep, ragged sigh. Your father's relationship with magic is complicated. Our relationship is complicated. If he knew I was keeping the secret for so long, well, I'm not sure how he'll do. Oh, come on! As if Papa would be anything but understanding to you. Don't act like he'd get mad. Cole let out a disbelieving huff. Why does Papa hate magic so much? He always dances around the question. But you know, don't you? The older hyena shook his head firmly. That's not my place to say. I promised him that I wouldn't tell, just as I didn't tell him about your bardic abilities. More secrets. More dancing around each other while you fluttered between us like the world's saddest little passenger pigeon. Why can't you just tell me? You know I'll find out eventually. Hamish looked torn. You keep a fair share of secrets as well, Cole. I won't betray Morrow's trust. Something in Cole snapped. You're full of nothing but secrets, too. And so is Papa. But I'm expected to just spill everything out, while you two keep everything to yourselves. You asked me to talk and be open, so here I am. You practically know everything about me. But the moment I ask for a tiny bit in return, it's suddenly too difficult. This house is full of nothing but hypocrites. Cole growled and stood up, his shoulders shaking. His haut pounded heavily against his chest, and unvented frustration spilled forth. If you won't tell me, fine. I don't need you to talk. I'll pry it out of you myself. Hamish caught the flicker of arcane light across Cole's eyes, just a second too late. He leapt to his feet, panic gripping his chest. Don't! Detect thoughts! Family. To this day, I'm not sure if I completely understand what that word truly means. Everyone seems to just know, as though it comes naturally to them. How? How can they be so sure? I can't understand. Days, weeks, and years go by, and the same question claws at the back of my mind. Am I doing this right? Family could mean the home you grew up in, perhaps. Mine was nothing too spectacular. A modern house near the forest, where birds sang and the trees whistled in the wind. It wasn't fancy or impressive in any regard, but it was comfortable. Despite all that's happened, I can't help but think back on that little house in the woods with a bit of fondness. I suppose family could be the people who raised you. Father was a humble hunter and ranger. He had scarcely anything to his name but the bow on his back, and he would toil for endless days to keep a warm roof over our heads. After I became of age, he would passionately teach me the ways of the ranger. I would join him on his hunting trips, where we brought back meat and pelts to sell. I could still remember the pride I felt the first time I hit my mark with a bow. My feelings towards my father were nothing short of contentment and gratitude. My mother, on the other hand, she was also kind. Yet, I could never shake the feeling that she did not want to be here. That she did not want me to be here. Growing up, I could see the strain on her face as she forced a smile for Father and I. There must have been something I was doing wrong. I picked flowers for her, I helped her with her chores, and did everything I could to please her. And she would not smile and thank me. Oh, and she would smile and thank me. Okay. But I was not blind to the emptiness behind her eyes. What was I missing? There must have been something wrong with me. And then the long winter came. Father and I departed for a long hunting trip in preparation for the cold season. Perhaps it was due to his exhaustion, or perhaps a stroke of cruel luck. Hunting has always been a dangerous game. Prey fight back the hardest when cornered. When Father fell, I cried for what felt like an eternity. I cried and cried until my lungs burned and my chest ached. The tears would not stop falling, and as I struggled to bury him in the cold winter soil, what was I supposed to tell Mother? Family? It's such a strong word, yet it falls apart all too quickly. The pieces kept falling. The house was gone. Only ash and rubble remained where it once stood. Fear and turmoil were the only things I felt as I searched the debris. There was nothing to come home to. But Mother was always a careful woman. She must have survived. She must have. I felt a bit of relief when I discovered faint traces of someone leaving the collapsed house before it burned to the ground. Then came the dread. Was Mother okay? Does she even know about Father's death? The next few months were a blur as I desperately searched for her in every place I could think of. The city, the depths of the woods, everywhere. I had to find her. She was the only family I had left. It took months of searching through the scattered clues and traces. It was as though Mother actively did not want to be found. And that couldn't be true, could it? We were still family, after all. But then the day came I finally found her. And dread gave way to confusion and heartache. There she was. Mother, laughing with more joy in her eyes than I have ever seen in my life. Looks a little out on the levels. And by her side was a new husband and a new son. Everyone beaming with such happiness. No deaths, no empty smiles, just happy. I stood there, watching them for what felt like centuries. And I continued watching after they retreated to their new home, leaving me alone in the frigid night air. The world suddenly felt very cold. Through the storm of turmoil, writhing in my chest, one thought cut through the rest like a knife. I did not understand how I could be so easily replaced. Perhaps there was something about me that made it easy. Strange, then, that a few days later I would meet the love of my life while I was busy stuffing rocks in my pocket. I had thought I was alone on the lakeside beach. My eyelids were sore, and my mind clouded from the ceaseless sobbing fits. You could hardly blame me for not noticing his approach. What are you doing? I froze. The other man froze as well, his eyes darting between these sagging rocks in my pocket and the dark lake water beside me. What are you doing? He repeated the question, knowing exactly what I was doing. I blinked, the tears out of my ragged eyes, and stared up at him blankly. Well, I suddenly felt very silly. I hesitantly put down the large stone in my hands and looked around for an excuse that didn't make this encounter hellishly awkward. I'm gathering rocks to sharpen my arrows with. The other hyena glanced at my bow and quiver, lying in the sand. The 2 worn arrows poked out of the quiver. That's a lot of arrows. Well, gotta find the right kind of rocks and stuff. It's a ranger thing. You wouldn't understand. The other hyena continued staring, looking wholly unconvinced. I suppose it looked rather obvious when someone was attempting to off themselves via drowning. The awkward silence hung in the air as the 2 of us stood at a standstill, desperately thinking of something to say. I noticed a large bag hanging over his shoulder. What's that you've got there? Oh, this. Papa made me come out and measure the flow of the lake using these funky arcane instruments. The old git told me to not come home till I was done. Sounds like an easy job. The other hyena huffed indignantly. Well, yeah. I ain't got the brains for this kind of thing. All this complicated magic-y shit goes way over my head. The old fuck probably gave me this job just to spite me. An idea suddenly clicked in the well-dressed hyena's head. He flashed me a toothy grin. Hey, you got some time to help a guy out. I could use an extra hand on this job. It's not too hard. Just gotta float these crystal thingies around the lake perimeter. I'll treat you to dinner for your hard work. You look like you could use some food in your belly. I glanced down. I guess I hadn't eaten in a while. My head has grown unsightly thin, and my coat hung loose over my gaunt body. I guess I don't have anything better to do. Sure. Aye. Thanks, buddy. I'll make it worth your while. And so I spent the rest of my evening strolling through the lake with this stranger in tow. It probably would have been quicker if we had split up and took separate paths around the lake, but but he insisted on sticking close to me. The well-dressed hyena spent the entire time chattering away to fill the silence, while I quietly, yes, that's quietly, nodded along. Whenever he wasn't looking, I'd secretly toss another rock out of my pocket, and he'd patiently pretend not to notice. By the time we were done, the sun was already settling down to the horizon. For the first time in months, the raw sting around my eyes where non-stop crying had softened. The well-dressed hyena dusted himself off and slung his now empty bag over his shoulder with a triumphant grin. And done. Papa should have nothing to complain about. So, how about that dinner? He gave me such an incredibly cheesy wink that I wasn't sure where to laugh or groan. Instead, I handed him the last of his arcane instruments and politely shook my head. Thanks, but you don't have to. You've done more than enough already. Oh, but I insist. What kind of person would I be if I didn't compensate a guy for his hard work? A flash of worry flickered briefly across his grinning face. You got any plans tonight? Got a place to stay? I stared at him blankly for several moments before shaking my head. No, not really. He shot me a sympathetic smile and patted my shoulder. That's rough, man. You looking for work or anything? If you're interested, my family's been looking for a new worker after I scared off a bunch of the older ones. You're welcome to stay with us till you're back on your feet. I... Thank you. But you look like a big, important guy. You shouldn't be wasting your time on me. I should really be on my way. Concern grew on his face. He quietly placed both hands on my shoulders and gave me a firm but gentle look. I don't want to leave you alone here. If there's anything you need, please, just ask. In that moment, something in me broke. My breath hitched, and tears began swelling at the edge of my vision. Utterly failing to hold myself together, I hung my head low as the floodgates broke. I think I'd like that. Thank you. You didn't have to. He smiled and gingerly patted my back. It's okay. You're okay here. I continued to ball in my hands in front of him, my face a complete mess. I tried and failed to steady my breath. It was utterly embarrassing. I tried to speak and thank him, but a mess of jumbled words spilled out. We haven't even introduced ourselves yet. My name's Hamish. Thank you. He let out a deep, jovial laugh. I felt him reach down and pluck the very last stone hanging in my pocket. With a huff, he tossed it as hard as he could into the lake with a sharp splash. Nice to meet you, Hamish. My name is Merrick. Is this Merrick or Murrick? How is this pronounced? I don't know. I'm glad I ran into you today. Yeah, thank you. I think I want to stick around. Just a little longer. In the many years after our first meeting, I had found a new family in Merrick. There was no emptiness behind his eyes, and he smiled only genuine joy. I had finally found someone who wanted me to stay. But in spite of all this kindness and love, one thought stuck in the back of my mind, like a foul parasite. It was a fear that I could never quite manage to shake, haunting me at all moments of our lives together. How long will it be until I'm replaced once more? Cole woke up with a start, the memories rushing from his mind as he resurfaced from the depths. His heart was pounding a mile a minute in a gnarled twist of emotions. Cutting through all of them like a knife was a sharp stab of regret. He shakily sat up and looked around. Hamish was nowhere to be found. He must have ran off the moment the spell had connected. Cole squeezed his eyes shut and buried his face in his hands. All of the anger from before felt so utterly petty now. He really couldn't stop ruining everything, could he? Ah, okay. That was a great update. More than good. Great. I really liked that. Hamish is a good boy. Really liked that scene. Can't wait for the next build. I'll see you around, everyone.